Merry Christmas, everybody, even though it's a day late, and want to talk a little bit about some of where Alabama's players ended up in the transfer portal because it seems pretty doggone telling to me.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama, AHSA's radio network. Luke Robinson, that's me. Bama Online's Jimmy Stein can't be here today. He probably can't be here for the next couple of days, family duties, Christmas stuff, and I think he's on Skull Island. He told me he has no internet activity, and after my kids watched Kong versus Godzilla or Godzilla Loves Kong or whatever it is this weekend, I realized there probably isn't a lot of internet activity there, and that's the only place on Earth that has none, and I think that's where Jimmy is. But this episode is brought to you by Gametime. I want to thank Gametime for always being a fantastic sponsor, and I want to thank you guys, you everydayers, for being here every day, and thank you newbies for being here today. So it's just going to be a solo show today. Hope y'all are okay with that. I am going live, which means that you can have some comments. That helps things go a little bit more when it's just a solo show. So I wanted to have you guys interact. But I wanted to talk a little bit about where Alabama's players that got in the transfer portal ended up. And I think that it's pretty telling in the sense that, that where these guys wound up tells me that Alabama may be upgrading, okay? Not in every case, but for overall, I think the transfer portal, Alabama gets out of it more than what they put into it, even if the quantity isn't the same, the quality is higher. I want to just read down some of these, and then you can certainly interject. But Jaheim Otis, he's going to Colorado. All right, I think Otis, my man, me and Jimmy loved him, and he's had a lot of potential. But he hadn't been playing since about midway through the year when he decided he didn't want to be on the team anymore. I don't think that's a huge loss. It is literally, it isn't figuratively. And then you have Keanu Coote going to Vanderbilt. Okay, this one's, again, I know you can insert your own Vanderbilt beat Alabama joke here. But if you're going, if your guys get in the transfer portal, they all go to Vanderbilt or something like that, and you get other guys, I think you're upgrading because you don't want to be Vanderbilt. Again, no shot at Keanu Coote. Vanderbilt's a heck of a program right now. They're not the best program in the country, and they did beat Alabama, and they did beat Auburn, and they took Texas to the wire. What I'm saying is it's a net positive for Alabama. Keanu Coote also hadn't he got in a little bit of hot water for whatever reason, and we won't go into that, but I think, again, it's a net positive. Jaleel Hurley going to Kansas. Let me say this. I love Jaleel Hurley coming out of high school. Absolutely loved him. Didn't work out. But, again, going to Kansas, a team that is, bottom tier of the Big 12, if you lose a player to somewhere like that, I think, again, net positive for Alabama. Kobe Prentice going to Baylor. Interesting landing spot for him. For those who don't know, he will be opening up with Baylor against Auburn in the first game next year. Baylor came on strong. Baylor's not a bad program at all. They are in Alabama. So you're seeing a trend here. A lot of these guys aren't transferring to Ohio State or to Texas or places. Excuse me, I muted myself when it's only me. I know some people don't understand, but I was trying not to clear my throat right here on the radio or whatever this machine is. Then there's Caleb Odom going to Ole Miss. This one may be more of a wash. I don't know if it's a net positive or a net negative. Caleb Odom going to Ole Miss seems okay to me. I'm okay with it, but I think he's got a lot of potential to be good. So I'm not necessarily losing sleep over losing Caleb Odom, especially when we get Isaiah Horton from Miami, who's 6'4", over 200 pounds. Maybe he can be more of the big target we wanted Caleb Odom to be, because let's also call a spade a spade. While I loved Caleb Odom coming out of high school, when he did get his opportunities, and granted he didn't get many, he didn't make the most of them at Alabama. Miles McVay going to North Kakalaki. I thought his tweet was wonderful. He said that that he went from one goat to the other goat, meaning Nick Saban to Bill Belichick. I thought that was a very, very good way to announce that. And Brantley Darnell says Luke is greater than DeBoer. I am not greater than DeBoer. And I'm not even talking about Kalen DeBoer. I'm talking about any DeBoer on the planet. And just reading a couple of these comments. And so I may interject those from time to time. Again, when you're going solo, I do a lot more train of thought here. Then there's Kendrick Law going to Kentucky. We all love Kendrick Law. We all thought Kendrick Law was going to be a somebody. Well, it just never materialized. Love his blocking. Think that's wonderful. Also think it's kind of nutty when you say a receiver's best attribute is their blocking. So I think it's okay that Kendrick Law is gone. Kendrick Law will be going to Kentucky. Hey, I hope he does really well when Kentucky plays Auburn next year. I'm not saying he will because I'm not sure that he can, but we'll see. Hunter Osborne going to Virginia. This is a guy that I liked a lot. I really did like Hunter Osborne, and I thought he was kind of gumpish. I thought Law was too, by the way. But it turns out that both these guys, they probably got a better opportunity, and they probably get maybe, I'm guessing, less money, but more playing time and more opportunity to make more money. That may be where that comes down to. Niquel Bertrand, I hope I'm saying that right. That sounds like a Star Wars name, by the way. He's going to Syracuse. Absolutely no skin off anybody's back. Again, no offense to him at all, but he was not contributing. Dylan Lonergan was fourth on the depth chart at quarterback, and he is headed to Boston College. Again, kudos to him. I think he has an opportunity to be a good player there. He's going to go be playing under Bill O'Brien, which I think is wonderful. I'm super cool with that. Then I'm pulling for him, by the way. Devontae Smith going to Notre Dame. Okay, here's the first one that, in my opinion, is definitely it's not net positive. It could be a wash or it could be negative. I'm not going to lie. I like Devontae Smith. I'm also going to say this. He's not all SEC caliber, but he's solid. And would I like to have him on the team list next year? No doubt about it. He's the one guy so far on this list that if you said you can have one of these guys back, that would probably be the guy I would choose to have back, even over Caleb Odom, who probably has the most potential of this list, because I think Devontae Smith is the most proven. But I also think that my understanding is Notre Dame may have offered a much more lucrative package. If that is the case, then I can't blame him, and nor can I blame Alabama, because I wouldn't want to overpay for Devontae Smith. Excuse me again. Hey, look, post-Christmas, I got a bunch of kids here. I'm probably sick. Y'all just deal with it. You can't get it over the internets. Emmanuel Henderson going to Kansas. Same thing with Jaleel Hurley or Kendrick Law here. We all love Emmanuel Henderson. We thought Emmanuel Henderson was going to be a thing. He caught a nice ball against Georgia earlier this year, like on that first drive, if y'all remember, set us up for a touchdown. And he really hadn't done a whole lot since then. And then there's Damon Payne going to Michigan. And again, I like Payne, but did he ever really make an impact? I think the answer is no. So again, I'm not going to say Alabama wins that battle. I'm just going to say it's not a huge loss. And finally, you come down to Justice Haynes, who in my limited knowledge this morning has not yet committed to Michigan, but will be, which makes it very interesting, again, with Damon Payne and Justice Haynes both committing to Michigan. Alabama and Michigan play in just a few days, as you well know. Makes it a little bit more interesting, I guess. I think Justice Haynes is a perfect Michigan running back. I think both teams come out ahead on this. This is one of those win-win to me, honest to God. Justice Haynes is a good player, not a great player. Very strong runner, not super speedy. Maybe needs more field awareness, vision. There are a couple of times, like I think back to that Tennessee game where I needed him to get a first down on a little swing pass, I think it was, and he just didn't make the right cut or he slipped. And it's just one of those things you got to make that play. And that's what you need to do. And he didn't. And I think he's got a very Mike Hart look about him. He's got a Big Ten running back feel about him, doesn't he? I mean, very beefy, strong, handsome man. to quote Nutty Professor there. But yeah, I think this is a win-win because, again, Alabama is going to be bringing in A.K. Deere. You get Jam Miller back. We're going to get to see Richard Young against Michigan. I think that's wonderful. So, look, if Young goes out there and stinks it up against Michigan, if Jam Miller only gets 40 yards, okay, I may be a little more concerned. Even so, I would still be like, I'd rather go get somebody else out of the portal and just see what they can do. Somebody that's a little bit more seasoned and natural runner. That's my take on that. And again, that's no shot at Justice Haynes. I think he can be a good player. I don't think he can be necessarily a great player. I said in the summer I thought he could. So I mean, he could certainly prove me wrong again. There's no shot at him. It's just my hype for him did not match what ultimately happened. My expectations certainly didn't match what ultimately happened with him this year. So we're going to talk some more about some Alabama guys in the NFL. We're going to talk a little bit about Alabama basketball. We're also going to talk about some Alabama-Michigan stuff coming up in these next couple of segments. Going to tell you about Gametime, though. I use Gametime for everything. Always have. Always. I will. This weekend, I'm going to the Bama South Dakota game, South Dakota State, if you want to get technical. And I'm going to take a bunch of my children, all 17 of my children will go with me. And we will use the Gametime app to get our tickets because they'll be the best tickets that we can get for the money. And it'll be a lot of fun. And the tickets, I'll get to see where we're going to sit. That won't be blocked by anything. I'll know exactly where we're going to be. And if it were my first time using it, I could use code Locked On College to get $20 off that order. It's not my first time, obviously, because I've used it for the World Series. I've used it for Major League Baseball, other regular season games. I've used it for NBA and college basketball and college football and concerts and college baseball and pro football. I've used it for everything. And I've also used their customer service. This is the best thing I can say about Gametime. Honestly, they have, the app is fantastic. The prices are the best guaranteed. Seeing where you want to sit is great. But if you don't have good customer service, that sticks with you as a consumer. Like, I always really do try to believe that. I try to implement that with our stuff over at Robinson Iron. If somebody calls me, I want to help them because they can forgive something if you help them. They can forgive an accident or a mistake if you help them, or if they screw up, they will always remember you for helping them. Gametime helped me. I screwed up on the app one time. I did something wrong. I don't remember what it was. It was Miami Carolina game last year in Miami, and I had to get in touch with their customer service. First of all, I was shocked I could get their customer service, which was unbelievable. Like last second, like they were bam, bam, bam. They were right on it, and they helped me out, and we fixed it. And I got my ticket. And I got in the game, and it was super easy. I couldn't ask for anything more than that. That's the best testimonial you'll get is they help you if you screw up. That's kind of a big deal. So go check out Gametime today. You will love them. And that's a Luke Robinson guarantee, y'all. I really am sorry about the sinuses troubles today. That's going to keep happening. You can mute all you want to, or I could mute. If I muted, I guess it wouldn't happen much, but it's probably going to happen. So going to run down a few of these comments and see what anybody is going off here, because there are some folks, a lot of comments, man. Thank you guys for being here day after Christmas. Isn't that awesome? Says, was Kobe Prentice to Baylor college football's first trade? I don't know. Who did we trade him for? Did we get something from Baylor? I don't think we got anything. Garrett Lindsay says, "Oh, the greatest job in the world." I think that's what he's saying. Hey, look, I agree with you. Although it's a gig. I don't know if it's a job yet. There's some people in Locked On Network who this is their job. This isn't my job just yet. J. Cole says he's starting to not like DeBoer. Okay. Again, your opinion. I like DeBoer a lot, and I feel like things are coming. I mean, look, we got Zion Gibson, and if you want to hear more about Zion Gibson from Gadsden City, go check out the last podcast before this one. Jimmy and I talked about him, and again, Jimmy's not available. He knows more about that Gibson situation. Good player, one of the top 4 players in the state, and for next year, and he's going to. I mean, that's a big get. I mean, we've been. And he said, didn't we get a DB from Baylor? Not to my knowledge. Did we get a DB from Baylor? And I'm blanking right here. Or I think that there was one we were looking at. We got a DB from Utah. There was a DB that from Baylor, I think, that was visiting. I don't think he is committed as of this moment. And again, Christmas has been a whirlwind. Things happen, but I check all of the boards pretty frequently. I think there was one visiting that hasn't committed. I don't even know that he's got the green light to commit. We did get a transfer from Utah, who's a good player, more of a depth piece, and Jimmy talked about that in the last episode too. Want to go ahead and mention a couple other things. Bama and the NFL. Look, when it's just me up here, I want to talk about things that I love, and I love me some Derrick Henry. Let me tell y'all why he doesn't get mentioned in the same breath with a lot of pro and college greats is beyond me. I still every now and again hear Rick Neuheisel on the Sirius XM show say that he thought that Christian McCaffrey should have won the Heisman that year. I totally disagree. I mean, Christian McCaffrey was a great player. Don't get me wrong. Because he didn't win the Heisman doesn't mean he wasn't great. Derrick Henry took Alabama to the national championship and won it. And Derrick Henry set numerous records, and he did it in the toughest conference in the country. And he made people who have spent a lot of time in the pros. The guy whose name escapes me right now may have been, was it William Golston? I can't remember who it is from Michigan State. Derrick Henry stiff-armed him into oblivion when we played them in the semifinals in 2015. That guy's still in the pros. The guy that he stiff-armed, I'm pretty sure he's still playing professional football right now. That's how good Derrick Henry was. So Derrick Henry yesterday had well over 100 yards again, had another touchdown, had a couple of receptions too. He's so good, and I don't think people are appreciating him enough. I showed my kid. I have 3 children that pretty much grew up in Ohio, right? And one of them, hey, look, Arizona State, shout out. I know why I was locked on Bama wearing an Arizona State home field shirt, because my son goes to Arizona State. I'm going with him to the Peach Bowl. He got media credentials, and I just happen to be wearing this shirt. That's why. So it's not, Luke's not switching allegiances, but I will be pulling for Arizona State against Texas. But my son goes to Arizona State. My daughter's going to Bama next year. And then I've got another son that's 14. And they just don't know. They didn't know about Derrick Henry in college that much. I mean, they're that age. And my oldest son is more of a pro football guy, and my middle daughter loves Alabama football, but doesn't study the players like I do. So I said, y'all just gather around the fireplace. I did a little fireside chat. I said, let's watch Derrick Henry highlights from 2015, or just Bama in general. And that I showed the one, the game against Oklahoma in the Sugar Bowl, where he had two long touchdowns. You're like, oh my God, why aren't we giving this guy the ball all the time? By the way, does anybody else get bummed out that Derrick Henry was on the Alabama team in 2013 when we needed to get a 4th and 1 to salt away the Iron Bowl, and we didn't give it to him? Yeah. Anyway, so I showed him that. I showed him one of his runs against Ohio State. I showed him. His game against Mississippi State, where Gary Danielson, in the middle of his long run, as he breaks away, he goes, sheesh. That was his analysis. Sheesh. Pretty incredible. I showed him, I told him about how he has the most yards of any player that's ever played in an Iron Bowl. Now, and I said he scored, I showed that last touchdown he scored to keep his touchdown streak going. By the way, you remember that? Like, he had scored, I think, in 15 straight games, and that made it 16 straight games. Like, if he doesn't score on that essentially last second play, his streak is broken, and at least Auburn would have had that to hang their hat on too. Derrick Henry is as good of a college back as I've ever seen. I mean that with all sincerity. He's getting to the point where he's going to be as good of a pro running back as you've seen. Now, maybe you want to say, okay, let's not go crazy. He's top 10, not top 3. Okay, that's still pretty amazing. Look, Emmitt Smith's records are probably untouchable because he played till he's 87 years old. But Derrick Henry can play for a while. And what he was doing yesterday, again, at 30 years old, was stiff-arming good players. By the way, good former Bama players like Henry To'oTo'o, Christian Harris. Those 2 guys were taken for rides yesterday. And he, in his first year, could very well make it so that Baltimore can win the Super Bowl. It's going to be tough because I know the Chiefs are still the Chiefs. By the way, Najee Harris, he didn't have a great game yesterday, but I still like what he's doing this year. And the Chiefs are still the Chiefs. That's going to be tough. And they're going to have home field throughout the playoffs, which makes it so that they're probably going to the Super Bowl. But my God, Derrick Henry is just a absolute beast. And I think it's going to be one of those guys that 10 years after he retires from the pros, people are going to look back and go, Derrick Henry might have been the best high school running back of all time because he does have the national record. He might be in the top 3 of running backs, maybe top 5 of running backs in college of all time, and top 5 of NFL running backs of all time. How many people? Nobody does that. I mean, Jerry Rice was a good high school player, but obviously he wasn't super recruited because he ended up at Mississippi Valley State. I mean, I'm just trying to think of other big names. He's just, anyway, I'm just blown away by Derrick Henry all the time. And on top of that, he's a good person. I don't know if he's got coaching in his future. He doesn't really strike me as a coaching kind of guy. But I hope that forever Derrick Henry is associated with Alabama. I think, again, I love to have good ambassadors. I've told you Jalen Milroe is a great ambassador for Alabama. I've always said that. But my God, Derrick Henry, super ambassador. And Neil is throwing out some other great backs like Derrick Henry and Sean Alexander, Tony Nathan, Johnny Musso, Mark Ingram. All those guys are great. Najee Harris is certainly on the list. Derrick Henry, to me, is the best Alabama back of all time. And I just don't know. I think he'd be good in any era. That's something special. There's some guys who could be really good in certain eras. Derrick Henry, he's fast, he's strong, he's big, he's a good teammate. He doesn't complain. He's a pretty good catcher. He's not an awful blocker. I mean, there's so many things that he does well. So I had to talk about Derrick Henry for a minute because I'm so enamored with the guy. But we're going to talk a little FanDuel, and then we're going to come back and we're going to, talk a little bit of Michigan stuff here because, it's about that time that Alabama and Michigan get kicked off. All right, so FanDuel. Y'all know I love FanDuel. I know you love FanDuel. It makes everything better. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get on the great regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown or how many yards each player will get. Those make the game so much more fun. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, which, of course, is an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so Bama, Michigan coming up on Tuesday, 11 o'clock in the morning. Blah. But I'm kind of good with it because I do have to get up early the next day and go to the Peach Bowl, Arizona State and Texas. And again, very proud of my son. I don't mind saying it when I'm doing a solo show. I'll shout out my family members, especially my offspring. My son got media credentialed for it. He's at Arizona State now. He's writing for Sun-Devil Daily. So very special moment for him. And I don't have to buy an extra ticket. So wanted to go to Bama Online here for a second. They put out an interesting article about different by the numbers things for Alabama, Michigan. And here's one of the numbers that Jimmy and I have been talking a long time, and that number is 10. Alabama is trying to get its 10th win. They have won at least 10 games every season since 2008. That's 16 seasons in a row. That is a big, big deal to keep this going. If it's not the longest streak of all time, it is getting dangerously close to that. Because here's the one thing you have to remember. For the longest time, there were only either 11 games or 12 games played in a season. So it would have been very difficult for somebody to start this, back in the 40s and keep it going because you didn't play that many games. And now, of course, you can play probably 17 games in a year, so it'll be a lot easier to do. But it means I really don't want this streak to end. And as I've said a gazillion times, Auburn's only had back-to-back 10-win seasons once in their glorious history. And so it's a big deal to keep it going. Here's another thing. I did not know this number. This is scary in a sense, and also is going to shape the future of college football, if you ask me. 63 players will be available for Alabama for the ReliaQuest Bowl. That the number you can normally have is 85. There won't be Devontae Smith. There won't be Justice Haynes. There won't be Malachi Moore. That's kind of a big deal. So not only that, no Kendrick Law, no Kobe Prentice, no Caleb Odom, no Emmanuel Henderson. Right now, we got about 4 wide receivers that can play. Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard, Rico Scott, and Jaron Hamilton. The thing that scares me about that, fewer players you have, more opportunity for injury. That's what really bothers me. So anyway, it's also kind of funny that it's exactly 1 year ago when Alabama and Michigan play. It's exactly 365 days that Alabama and Michigan will have, rematch from that semifinal game last year. Also, this is Alabama's 78th bowl appearance. Now, that number used to mean something. That number doesn't mean much anymore. I mean, let's be honest. There are too many bowl games, just like there are too many playoff games, too many playoff teams. So it's, that number's not going to mean as much anymore, especially when people are going to start opting out more. Justin Clayton, my local resident Auburn friend, says he's not bummed out about y'all not giving the ball to Derrick Henry in the 13 Iron Bowl. Yes, I understand. In hindsight, it's crazy to think he was on the roster and we didn't give him the ball all the time. But that particular play is what gets me. Alabama does pretty well in Tampa for the most part, it feels like. Now, their record is 1-2, but they played very well in the national championship game, if you remember that. Against Clemson in 2016. Shout out to whoever was there with me. I really enjoyed that game, even though Alabama lost. And then, of course, Alabama won in 97, and that was Gene Stallings' last game, very famously. I remember Sean Alexander, who, by the way, came down to Alabama and Michigan in his recruiting. Sean Alexander had a big game. He had a long touchdown to end the contest. Dwayne Rudd. Some people remember Dwayne Rudd for rumors versus football stuff, but and I won't go into those rumors, but he had an interception return for a touchdown. And I'll never forget Dwayne Rudd, who was like, he was a specimen. I mean, he was a beast. He has an interception return for a touchdown. And after the interception, he just runs straight over to the wall, separating the fans from the players. And he puts his arms up on it. And he's like just completely out of breath. And I remember thinking, why is he so out of breath? I mean, he probably runs like that to Chick-fil-A. I mean, why? He should. Anyway, so that was very interesting. And then, of course, Alabama lost the 1988 Hall of Fame Bowl in Tampa. But it was a good game. Again, it was a good game. I know I said Alabama fares well in Tampa. I'm saying they play well. They hadn't won as much there. But they played in the 1988 Hall of Fame Bowl. And if I remember right, I'm not looking at BOL or anything for this. I remember watching that game. It was on NBC. It was the first time Alabama and Michigan had ever played, by the way. And it was after January 1, if I remember right. It was like January 2nd or January 3rd. It was bizarre. And I don't remember why it was. I remember watching the game at my grandparents' house at 88. So I was like 15, 16. Probably 15. So it just interesting. That game sticks out to me. So Alabama and Michigan have somewhat of a history. It's a lot more recent than anything, but especially when you consider these two powerhouse programs, the two of the top winningest programs of all time didn't ever play each other until 1988. That's kind of nutty. Now, for some of y'all who are super young and weren't born until like 2012 or whatever that are watching this, that's not that big a deal. For somebody like me, who was born in 72, and I found out Alabama and Michigan first played in 1988, that's kind of silly. College football needs to fix that. So, all right, guys. Hey, appreciate every single one of y'all being here with me today. Hope all of y'all had a wonderful Merry Christmas. And I will be talking to y'all again very, very soon. Until next time, roll tide, everybody.